So to start out, my name is Ozolit. People call me Oak, like the tree. I studied pretty much maths and physics in uni. It was called Computer Systems and Engineering. When I went to uni, I had no idea what that was about. I learned it the hard way. And I did finish it in the nominal time, so 3 years, and I really burned out, and it was horrible. But ever since I finished that in 2013, I turned pro. I actually started to work in games immediately after that. And I've also been teaching since 2011. I initially started out as a teaching assistant in my uni, but then later on, starting from 2015, I started teaching game development. I've worked on games such as Disco Elysium, Heroes of Might and Magic, Tropico 6, if anybody knows the Tropico series, and then more recently, Death and Taxes, and some other stuff that is probably largely irrelevant. But most of these games I just kind of accidentally fell into. I just kind of knew people and got to work in these places where they were working on these games. And yeah, it kind of just I was involved in happy little accidents along the way, which just led me to these projects. So I'm actually going to stand over here because it's a much better place. I feel kind of cornered there. So that's all cool. That's what I'm doing today, but what actually came before that? So when I was young, I had a lot of ideas about what I wanted from life. I was very kind of dead set on studying some specific things. I wanted to go into academia. I wanted to be a scientist. First, I wanted to be an archaeologist, like a practical archaeologist, a field archaeologist who would go out into the field and actually, dig up shit. That didn't turn out too well. Then after a while, as I was growing up, I was enamored by chemistry and I wanted to become a chemist. So that was actually when I was like between the ages of 12 to 18 or something. I was dead set that I'm gonna go to Tallinn and I'm gonna study chemistry, like practical chemistry, which for those of you who don't know is like one of the top 3 most difficult specialties that you can actually study there. It's insane. And then when I was finishing my high school exams, I got 63% on my exam for chemistry, which kind of crushed that dream immediately. So not everything turned out the way that I imagined that it would, and that led me to a whole bunch of adventures. So I'm gonna roll back a little bit to back when I was 12 years old. When I was young, I was playing a lot of games. I've been playing games since I was something like 5 years old or something, and it was mostly computer games, like PC games. And I would play like on my family's computer or in my uncle's computer or in my own house. We had a computer. I would play all the games that I could get there from anywhere, and it was mostly pirated games because that was kind of the situation back then. And I really liked them, and I played a lot of them, and I was learning a lot very, very fast, and I was getting good at those games. So I was thinking, is there any way that I could utilize this skill? And this was the 12-year-old sociopathic me thinking like, I'm gonna become the best gamer in the world. But I didn't actually realize how deep the whole game industry went back then. And when I was 13, it was 12, it was what, 2003? So the games industry was kind of just going into the golden age of the 2000s. And what I discovered through the wonders of the internet was that you could join beta tests in games and alpha tests. And for those of you who don't know, a beta or an alpha version of a game is basically an unfinished version that is being released to the public to test it, to kind of stress test it or to just kind of verify that it's working properly. And I signed up for everything that I could find. I would literally just Google or use things before Google to get my hands on as many games as possible. And I did. And I became pretty good at testing games. And I had pretty good English skills, and I could communicate very well, and I was anonymous. So I was like this 12-year-old kid who would go into forums and write essays about why your game sucks. Very normal behavior for a kid stuck in puberty. And then that kind of escalated to the point where I was attached to some projects in a more kind of committed manner. And my first game credit, actually, I think is from 2004, from when I was 13 years old, when I localized an entire game with kind of like an internet friend of mine from German and English into Estonian. And it was called Clonk Endeavor. So if you played Terraria before, then Clonk was the Terraria before Terraria. It's pretty much like a direct ripoff. And that was really fun. And that was the point where I learned that I could actually get something from working in games. Previously, I was like, oh, games just exist. You just buy them. And they just like materialize out of nowhere. And it's like, I had no idea about the process, but then I was involved. And then I was like, I'm getting something back because I got like a lifetime key for all of that studio's games. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And I kind of got confidence from that. And I ended up being a design consultant for Ubisoft when I was 14 years old for the Heroes of Might and Magic series. Again, anonymity. I was my best ally because when I was actually at the point where I had to sign an NDA with them, a non-disclosure agreement, meaning that I can't actually talk about anything that like they show me, they discovered that I was 14 years old, which led to a very interesting situation of their legal department contacting me and asking like, can we ask your parents to sign the NDA? And I was like, no, you can't. And then they wrote me a special NDA that was like, I pinky promise that I'm not gonna tell anyone else. Because by France's laws, unless I was 16 years old, I am not legally liable for anything. So I kind of got away with that. And of course I didn't like tell anyone. And that's how I actually started working on Heroes of Might and Magic, the series. I started with Heroes of Might and Magic 5. That was in 2005. And then I was a design consultant for Ubisoft until 2013. And what that means is that they just threw me around the world to conventions, gave me free stuff, gave me merch, and I would play their games in the Might and Magic series and give them constant feedback. So it was a fair deal, but I never got any money for it. So when I studied in uni, I didn't actually realize what I was going to do after it, but after I finished uni, I had accumulated enough contacts in the industry, specifically in Ubisoft, that I would just ring up the studio that was developing Heroes of Might and Magic 7, and I asked them like, hey, do you need a programmer? I kind of know how to code. And then they said, yeah, because they already knew me, and I just kind of worked for me. So why did I actually decide to go for games? Mostly, so I was a programmer for my first, so that's 2013 until 2018. I was pretty much only programming, and I got really good at it. I was programming in several languages. I was writing Unreal Script, which was kind of like Java. I was writing C, C++, all the works. And then it was a very stressful lifestyle, but it, like as I was learning the process, I was working in an actual big gaming company with like 100 employees. It taught me just insane amounts about the industry. I pushed myself into every meeting that I could find and saying like, hey, I was the design consultant for the series for like 10 years, let me in this meeting. I was like really, really bad about it. And they let me join because they knew that my input would be valuable. So all of the little things that I had done across my life the past 10 years kind of led up to that moment without me having any idea that it would actually come in useful. And then it did. And I tried to learn as much as possible from my job so that I could come back to Estonia, because I had to move to Germany for that, so that I could come back to Estonia and spread the word and spread the knowledge on how to make games. And that's kind of how it ended up, and this is why I'm here. And I thought about going into games like only right after I finished uni, and I've never looked back. I still want to make games. I still have that drive, and I don't imagine myself doing anything else because I'm so deep into it. I make games, I talk about making games, and I teach other people how to make games because that's what I like to see. And the main reasons that I'm still in games is just the good old Maslow pyramid of needs. The one at the very top called self-actualization, that's games for me, basically. I can't live without them. I want to play them, I want to make them, it's wonderful. And secondly, I like telling stories, no surprise, I guess. And of course, the third very nonchalant reason, because I can. I kind of ended up in a fortunate situation where, like during my lifetime and with the decisions I've made, I can afford to make games. I can do that for the foreseeable future. And even if I lose everything that I work for today, I could probably find something and start over. Because, yeah, experience counts in this industry, fortunately or unfortunately. And for you guys, so the games industry has changed quite a lot in, I would say, the last 10, 15 years. Games have become, game development rather, has become way, way more accessible. It's easy to kind of pick it up, and that's why we get games such as Haiku the Robot, because there are tools, there are materials which you can use to actually go and do stuff. But there's so many places that you can start without necessarily having to make your own game if you don't feel comfortable yet doing so. So I didn't start out making my own game. I only started making my own game in 2021, pretty much. Like before that, I was working for other people's dreams while learning as much as possible to make my dream games. So a bit of a different life story there. And there's a lot of places that you can start. You can start to freelance your own skills. You can freelance with anything. For games, it's insane, like really. If you have any skill whatsoever, even if it's like juggling, then probably somebody's gonna need motion capture for a juggling animation, like literally. You can freelance your skills from anything to anyone. You just need to find the right people. Then doing work for order, meaning that you just do contract work for other people in like a specific time frame. It's not exactly the same necessarily as freelance, but you might like join a project for a little bit of time and then drop off and then go back in. You can collaborate with your own colleagues or co-students or anyone, and you can just kind of hone your skills as you're doing so. Then, of course, there's education, as Andres already mentioned. There's Full Cycle Academy in Pärnu. There's some other game dev related courses here in Estonia. You can start out there, and it will give you an interesting base, but it won't give you that many practical skills. The practical skills have to come from you. You have to put in the work. Then after you have kind of solidified a base for yourself, if you want to go that route and you don't have any savings yourself, then you can go for investments. You can search far and wide for people who are interested in your ideas or your skills and try to find investors to back your project. So pretty much like any startup. But there are obvious risks with this. The investors want to get their money back and then some. So whenever you go into like a legal deal with anyone, make sure that you know exactly what you are signing, because otherwise you might get very, very screwed. Case in point, Disco Elysium. If you haven't heard about it, put it into YouTube and type in Disco Elysium drama, and you're gonna get like 50 hours of amazing, cool shit happening, which destroyed so many people's lives. Yeah, game development is interesting. And then, of course, a very good way of just getting your kind of game idea ball rolling is just prototyping. And another kind of addendum about ideas, there was a question from there about stealing ideas and such. It might sound harsh, but nobody cares about your idea. Nobody cares about your idea until it's successful. And the idea doesn't matter, it's the execution that does. So my top kind of advice for people who are just joining the industry, especially if they want to make their own game, is to make something that only you can make. Like Jordan said, nobody can examine inside your head. So you have your own ideas, use your own personal experiences, use your own like skill set as a baseline for the plot of the game, for example. that's completely fine. Your experiences are unique. You're all unique people. You have a set of experiences and skills and thoughts and opinions that nobody else can compare to. And this is why games such as Undertale or Stardew Valley or Minecraft have become so big, because the people who made them really didn't give a shit. They just went for their idea and thought like, I would like to play this game, and they made a game exactly like that. So whenever you're thinking of like, if you struggle with coming up with an idea or struggling to commit to something, then look inwards. There's a lot that makes you special, and try to figure out how you can put that into an interactive form. And as I always also like to say, dream big, but start small. You can always make a bigger game later. It's important at first to become sustainable and obviously to not burn out. And it's really easy to burn out in game dev because it's all passion driven. It's the most passion driven industry in the freaking world. Like when I was working, for example, on Death and Taxes, like we had kind of like a silent agreement that nobody's gonna do overtime. And then I worked 16 hours a day anyway. Just because I could, I wanted to, I felt like it was okay, but I still burned out. So it's just something you have to be mindful of, and you can always kind of get trapped in the loop of, I need to do this now, or the idea is gonna slip away. It's actually not, and you might end up getting to a better idea as you kind of develop yourself as a person. And most of game development is just putting out fires, like trying to come to terms with your decisions, or trying to come to terms with, let's say, interesting situations that you may not have foreseen, but that's normal, that's life anyway. You might like slip from crisis to crisis, but the main point that you should focus on if you have like a tough time is to just treat yourself well. Give yourself time to process things. Don't feel guilty about not living up to your expectations, and try to give yourself the room to grow as a creator, as an artist, as a person.